Your Dog's Friend is a nonprofit 501c3 whose mission is to help keep dogs out of shelters by educating and supporting their humans. We promote positive method of training and behavior modification through stress-free methods. As part of that mission, we offer free webinars like the one you're about to watch. Subjects range from dog behavior, stress-free training, and other tools to help you understand your relationship with your dog. If you like the webinar, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Click the notification bell and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be notified when future videos are posted. Now enjoy the webinar.
Welcome to today's webinar sponsored by Your Dog's Friend. Our topic is Control Unleashed, a training protocol that helps dogs stay calm and focused. Our speaker, Angie Madden, has a training business, DogSpeak, in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and is certified as both a dog trainer and a Control Unleashed instructor. She came to dog training after working in aquariums and zoos, a background that I find fascinating. You may not know that Your Dog's Friend is a nonprofit. Your donations help support these webinars and our other free services. So please consider going to the donations icon at the top of our homepage. I will also put a link in chat. I know that you will learn a lot from today's webinar. I will too. It's all yours, Angie.
All right, thank you. Well, I am very excited to be sharing the Control Unleashed program with you all today, especially because I think many of you are not familiar with the program, so I'm very happy to introduce you to it. And those of you that are more familiar, I hope you still take something away from today's presentation. So, topic, Control Unleashed. Get help for your distracted, anxious, reactive, or easily aroused dog. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to introduce what is Control Unleashed. I'm going to cover the concepts of foundation behaviors for conversational training and relaxation. We're going to talk about pattern games. And last, we're going to talk about cooperative care and counter conditioning, the CUA. And hopefully throughout, you will see some highlighted everyday applications for CU methods. Control Unleashed, what is it and why use it? So Control Unleashed is a program based on Leslie McDevitt's books and DVDs. The original book, the original Control Unleashed book was actually written for the work that she had been doing with agility dogs. So she started off as an agility trainer, and she was working with people who did agility with their dogs whose dogs struggled in that environment. And so the techniques that she developed to help them led to her first book. The second book, the puppy program, was basically written to hopefully avoid those problems that people were having with their adult dogs. And then the third book is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So Reactive to Relax. It's how the program has evolved. And that's where the pattern games are really written out and highlighted. So what is it? It's classical conditioning with an operant base. That's actually a Ken Ramirez quote. It utilizes conversational training, and it's based on the concepts of desensitization and counter conditioning, which is why it's great for reactive or fearful dogs. Why use it? It establishes a system of communication. This is one of my favorite things about Control Unleashed, is that communication component. It builds a strong training relationship. It gives the learner agency. That is key. And in the same aspect follows the golden rule. So it's that part of communication and conversation is really about letting your dog have part of that. So it's not just us telling the dog what to do, but it's us having a conversation with our dog and giving them some agency and some choice and control. Yeah, let's keep going. So we'll start with foundation behaviors. And this is where we get into the relaxation and biofeedback. These are both Dr. Karen Overall's protocols. Dr. Overall was a mentor for Leslie, and so that's where these came from. The benefits of these are to achieve an optimal state for learning and to learn for the dog to learn how to regulate their arousal levels. The exercises in the two exercises are take a breath, is what we call it in Control Unleashed. It's referred to as biofeedback by Dr. Karen Overall. And then the relaxation protocol. And the relaxation protocol is a series of things that you do with your dog to help them learn how to relax in different situations. And we're going to go over that a little bit here. But we're going to start with take a breath. I will tell you that the first half of this video does not have any talking. The talking doesn't come in until the second half, and it is very quiet. If you do turn your audio up, you'll probably want to turn it back down because some of the later videos will be louder because they'll have music. But also, it may skip as you're watching it. So as I'm doing the narrating over it, you may not be seeing it at the right time. This is a public video on YouTube. So you are welcome to go watch it there, and I'll try and remember to drop a link in the chat later on when we get to the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. And again, there will not be any talking until you start seeing live video. So the slides do not have talking, so there's nothing wrong with your audio.
I'm going to start with some more subtle breathing so that you can see what you're looking for. There was an inhale. Here you're going to see her lift her head up a little bit to smell. Here her nose moves a bit as she's inhaling. And in this next one, you're going to see a deeper inhale right there. So here's a different angle. We start to get a wider nostril flare right there. That's a more subtle breath. And then we finish with another wider nostril flare right there. So here is another dog. You're going to see that it looks different with each dog. There was a very obvious inhale. This dog has a bit more of a poof. You can almost see it a little clearer behind the nose. Right there, nice deep inhale. Here's a puppy learning to take a breath. So again, it's a little more subtle, but you can definitely see the inhale, again, almost even behind the nose. This dog has a more obvious nostril flare. Again, it looks a little bit different on each dog.
Angie, some people are having trouble seeing the video or it's a little skippy. Could you put the link to the video in chat? Okay.
Yes, I will do that. I was planning on doing that because that does tend to happen.
So don't worry if your dog doesn't.
Do you want me to do it now? I was going to do it at the Q&A.
Again, over time, as they figure out that you just want them to breathe, you may get these more obvious nostril flares because they want
to do it now and then again later.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't done. The credit slide was coming next, but I apparently skipped that. So my apologies. I am going to pull up the link so that you guys have that. And while I'm doing that, I just want to let you know that what I want you to take away when thinking about take a breath is not, I have to see my dog's nose flare. I have to see this. What tends to happen is you stare at your dog and your dog is like, whoa, what am I supposed to be doing here? And it shouldn't be a trick or an offered behavior. The feeling that I want you to think about is I want you to think that I want you to think Zen. So for those of you that do yoga or meditation, you're going to be doing your yoga breathing. And it's really about you modeling those nice, deep, calm inhales so that your dog begins to mimic that. So I'm doing those very audible breaths. And then over time, as you're relaxing and you're just watching your dog. So you do the inhale and then you feed, and you do the inhale and you feed, and you're not asking anything from your dog. You're just sort of being in the moment together. And what you'll find is as you're in the moment together, you'll get that aha moment. I saw it. So don't feel that pressure that you have to be staring at your dog. The line in there, don't worry, your dog is breathing, is also a direct Leslie quote. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to relaxation protocol. I'm going to play this video. I think what happened with the last one was when I went over to the chat box, that's when the video froze. So I'm hoping that I can go over and put the link in the chat while this video is playing. But if that doesn't work, then we'll do that later. So the relaxation protocol, again, is a Dr. Karen overall protocol that she developed specifically for helping dogs learn how to relax, how to access that parasympathetic nervous system. And it is a series of instructions that tell you to do things while your dog is relaxing on the mat. And it is something that is out in the public, that is available. I share it with all of my students, private classes, all of that. And so I like to refer to it as a paint by numbers because it's telling you exactly what to do and you don't have to think about it. And so this is a fast time video of me going through, I think, maybe day 2, the second set of the protocol. So you can see this in fast forward, and I will drop that link in the chat, hopefully. Yeah, it keeps pausing when I do something else. So I will do the link later. So just a couple highlights from there. You'll notice that I wasn't staring at the dog the whole time. Again, they start to feel like they're supposed to be doing something, and we just want them to be chilling out. The other thing is just note that the black dog, Piper, has gone through the protocol before. So I'm just rewarding her for remaining relaxed in hers. The brown dog, Obi-Wan, is our newer addition. He wasn't a puppy, but our pandemic puppy. And so that's why I'm doing the protocol pretty much around him and just reinforcing Piper every time I reinforce him for being calm on the mat. All right, moving on. Okay. So now we're going to get into some of the other foundation behaviors. So whiplash turn is one of the very first things that we teach because it begins to set up this idea of turning towards the handler and away from other things. So it has a focus aspect, it has a leave it aspect. So they are choosing to disengage from something and re-engage with the handler. And a lot of what we're doing with Control Unleashed is helping the dog to make good behavioral choices, the choices that we would like them to make. We're not telling them that they have to make those choices, but those choices are very heavily reinforced so that the dog makes them more and more often. In this one, what we're doing is we're putting a treat down on the ground. So it gives us a time to sneak behind the dog. I shouldn't say sneak, to move around to the back of the dog. Our tag point is going to the dog's tail. So you put the treat on the ground while the dog is eating, you move around to the tail. As soon as the dog is done eating, you're going to call their name and you're going to watch their neck. As soon as that head starts to turn, that's what we're marking. So click or your yes. And when the dog hears that, they know that it means treat. So they whip around to get the treat. And so that's why we call it whiplash turn. We like to joke that if you don't get dizzy, you're not doing it right. So here you'll see me doing whiplash turn with my dog Piper. 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 Good girl. As you're doing whiplash turn, what you'll start to see is that the dog starts to anticipate turning around. And so you'll get to a point where you can't even say their name before they're already turning to you. And so it starts to become this automatic. And that's where we start to shift from whiplash turn to orienting or reorienting towards the handler. So this is reorienting. And we use that term to refer to the dog automatically orienting toward the handler, especially when going through a threshold. So coming out of a crate, going through a door, going into the training room, going out the front door of the house. We are especially talking about when going from a less exciting environment to a more exciting environment. So all of those that I just listed tend to be very exciting environments. Coming out of the crate tends to be an exciting time. Going in for training is an exciting time. Going out of the house is an exciting time. And so what we set up is the first thing that dog does after going through the threshold is turn around and check in with the handler. Hey, what are we doing now? And that check-in can be reinforced several ways. If I'm going out the back door, I'm going to reinforce that by sending my dog off to go play. Thank you for checking in with me. Now go have fun. You will see an example of this. So this is a private client, and the easiest way to teach this concept is when the dog is coming out of the crate. So the person is standing off to the side so that the dog has to come out and turn around to find them. And so you will see that here.
I guess
so go ahead and step one. There we go.
yes.
Beautiful. That's what we wanted right there. So that was a perfect reorientation. So see if she'll go back in for you one more time.
See?
Good.
Yes. Good girl.
Beautiful.
Nice.
All right. So we're going to do one more. All right. So that's our very first step. And then over time, you start to make it a little more and more like a real life scenario. So she might get further and further away from the crate for her dog to have to come and find her. We might start to add things into the situation. So we might have her daughter walking around in front of the crate when she's coming out so that she hopefully turns away from the daughter and toward the mom. So things like that. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on each pattern and show examples of how we do that, just because there's so much to cover today. But that is one of the main things about why Control Unleashed is so effective, is because we set up the dog to succeed. We start off building this foundation that we can then add the steps to. So going up that ladder of success. And so we build on those layers, making sure that the dog is able to reach the next rung until we get to the top, which is, you know, the real world. Okay. Default behavior. We use a lot of default behaviors in Control Unleashed, in that the dog is offering behavior rather than being cued. That being said, when we refer to default behavior, we are talking about one specific behavior that the dog offers when they are requesting something, when they're not sure what else to do, if they're a little bit confused. So this is the behavior that your dog defaults to. The benefit for us as handlers is that a well-conditioned default behavior can actually override instinctive behavior. So a dog that might previously have instinctively reacted to a new dog or a new person by barking or lunging or some other not what we would prefer choice, they will default to this default behavior. Oh, there's something over there I'm not sure about. I'm going to sit in front of you, or I'm going to lay down. So the aspects of a default behavior is that it may be a trained behavior. It may be a captured behavior. It is conditioned by the trainer, meaning that it is always rewarded. So because it's always rewarded, it becomes reinforced, meaning that the dog offers it more and more. It tends to be what the animal offers when they want something. For most dogs, their first default behavior is to sit, because they learn that's the first thing that everybody teaches their dog is how to sit. And when the treats come out, boom, the bottom hits the floor, because if I sit, I get a treat. Typically, when you move on to relaxation protocol, a lot of dogs go to a down as their default, which is why Piper's default is a down, because we did all of the mat work, but either of those are fine. It could also be orienting towards the trainer. So the stare, so they're like looking at the trainer really hard, like notice me looking at you. I tend to like body position just because it's a little more obvious, but definitely that tends to become part of their default is orienting to the handler. Ideally, it becomes self-reinforcing, because doing that feels better than getting worked up. So a lot of benefit to default behavior. Oh, whoops. So sorry. Let me try that again. Let me see if I put it on here. don't know why I chose that music. It was all frantic. I have a slight confession to make. So when I was trying to come up with videos for default behavior, I didn't have a whole lot. And I thought, oh, Piper she's like the best at offering her default behavior whenever I'm in the kitchen, because she knows that when I'm in the kitchen preparing stuff, if she goes to her station, offers her default behavior of lying down, she's going to get reinforced for it. So I went in, I set up the video, I start making my shake, I'm doing stuff in there, and she was asleep on the couch and I had to go wake her up because she wasn't coming. I thought, oh, she's going to hear me in the kitchen, and here she comes. So I didn't tell her to do anything, but I did have to wake her up so that she knew I was in the kitchen. But this is something that is very heavily reinforced because at the time I had young children, and young children means food hitting the ground all the time. So I wanted a really strong default behavior of her being out of the kitchen when food was being prepared. So that was an example of default behavior. Before I go on, I'm sorry, I just want to pull up the chat again because I took it down just so I can see if there's something that pops up and I might be able to answer a question in real time. Okay. Okay. Look at that. This is probably the best known, or I should say most widely known protocol from Control Unleashed. It is also, unfortunately, the most misunderstood, misused at times. I am not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I am going to talk about what it is. I am going to show examples, but this is something that you could really do a deep dive into. And what I will say is, to learn more about Look at That, there is a Leslie McDevitt has shared on her YouTube page one of her talks on Look at That really takes a nice deep dive into what it is not, what it looks like, how to properly utilize it. And when I'm dropping links, I will drop that in there. And also at the end of the slide will be links to her YouTube page and a couple other sources. So that being said, what is Look at That? It is a protocol in which the animal is asked to point out an environmental stimulus on cue. It starts a dialogue between the learner and the trainer or handler, in which the learner, the animal, in this case a dog, is able to report, hey, there's something over there, rather than react. Oh, thank you, Kathy. The environmental stimulus becomes a cue for the animal to orient to the trainer. So as they learn this game over time, seeing something in the environment that was previously of concern, or maybe is still a slight concern, their automatic response is to tell their person about it. Hey, did you see that there's a dog over there? Why, yes, I did. Thank you for telling me. Would you like a cookie? The final product is a behavior chain in which the animal notices a stimulus and then orients to the trainer. I did list it as a cue. So it's a cue for the dog to do something, but it really isn't. I like to think of, and where is what we tend to say, where's the dog? Where's the person? I like to think of that almost more as a heads up. Hey, there's something out there. But more often than not, that's the only time I actually say the cue, is to let the dog know that there's something out there so it doesn't sneak up on them. But I'm letting the dog tell me whether we need to have this conversation or continue the conversation. So if the dog notices something first and points it out to me, or once I've told them that there's something to be pointed out, depending on whether the dog continues to point that out, that stimulus out, is letting me know how long the conversation needs to be. So I'm not going to keep asking them to point it out. I'm going to let them tell me, I'm still a little worried, we need to talk about it, or yeah, I've seen it, we're good, let's go. Okay. So typically there are two ways to teach Look at That. From the mat is what we tend to do because again, they have an association of, actually, I didn't talk about this, but with relaxation protocol, they have an association with the mat being a safe spot, a place to relax. There are good feelings. It also keeps them from getting up and, yes, That's good. I see Deborah saying I should stop. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Okay, let me finish this. I won't do the videos, and then I will go back and answer some questions. So the mat keeps them stationed so that they don't go up and interact with the thing. Because one of the points of look at that is that the dog is not interacting with whatever it is. And so when they're in the look at that setup, it helps them to feel more comfortable about whatever it is, because they know that whatever that is not going to interact with them. Okay. So I'm going to take a break. I know I tend to go through very quickly, so I apologize. I'm a fast talker and a fast mover here. So I'm scrolling up very quickly, looking for those QUs. Let me see. All right, so I saw that one. So that was the first one. How long is the webinar? And we answered that one. So, okay, so what's the link for the video? I'm going to skip that one. We will post that afterwards. Skipping down.
I've been writing them down if you want me to.
Okay, that would be great. I'm on the for take a breath example, but if you have one that I missed, Deborah, let me know.
Okay, not everyone put in Q2, so you're going to have QU, so you're going to have to look
Oh, okay.
at all of them.
All right, so give me what you have.
I've got to figure out where I started.
I took a couple. All right, well, you look, and I'm going to answer the one I see. Oh, you got it?
All right, you answer that one, and then I'll go from
Okay. It says, for take a breath example, should the smelly item you pull out be a treat or something with a stronger scent? Great question, Jamie. And the answer is it could be either. So in the video with my dog Piper, I was actually just using her kibble because we'd been practicing a whole lot. And for us, it was just, I would literally just get a couple in my hand. And so the fist, me holding out my fist sort of became the cue for her to breathe. But that way it was us just chilling out. So it was like, I got a little bit of kibble, I inhaled, she inhaled, eat the kibble, got a little bit of kibble, we inhale, eat the kibble. And through the video, you could start to see that she was offering deeper and deeper inhales that were easier and easier to see. If you are doing the scenting method where you're trying to stimulate an air scent, so trying to get the dog to do the air scenting, it can be food, it can be a non-food item. So if it's a non-food item, you would just have food there to reinforce. So you could have it like in a Tupperware or in a baggie or something, so that you are opening it up and the scent becomes available and the dog sort of, what's that? And as soon as they do, then you feed. So we don't mark the inhale because, again, we're not wanting to turn it into a trick. And also marking tends to get them a little more excited, and we don't want them to be in that mode. We want them to just be nice and calm. So it shouldn't look like training, but it can be a strong smelling food. If your dog tends to get a little over aroused by food, then using a non-food item as the scent to encourage that might be a great idea. And then you reinforce with some food that maybe doesn't get them too overexcited. Mona, I am guilty of staring. Yes, it's one of the things that we all do naturally, because when we're working with our dog, we're looking at them and they're looking at us, and we like that connection. But yeah, with the relaxation protocol, we want to get out of that habit, and also take a breath too. That's probably what you were referring to. Take a breath also. Okay.
There's a question about the relaxation protocol and whether you need to work throughout, through the entire day's protocol at one time, or can you split it up throughout the day?
Great. Another great question. So it is designed for you to, so that it's designed as sets. So there are sets of tasks. It used to say day 1, day 2, day 3, but that sort of gave the impression that you could do it in 15 days. Not so. Normally there's a certain point where you're going to get stuck on a certain set. So now it's called sets. So like set 1, set 2, and each set you should go through each time you're doing it. So what you saw me doing there was a complete set of, I think, set 2. Like I said, I think it was the second set. However, when you start off on the first set, what you may find is it says pause for 10 seconds and your dog starts to get restless somewhere in there. They're not used to remaining relaxed for 10 seconds. So it tells you how to make it easier for your dog to be successful. So let's say your dog can be relaxed for 5 seconds, but not 10 seconds. So when you hit that 10 seconds, you're going to start off feeding at 5 seconds, then feeding again at 10 seconds. And the next day or the next time that you do the relaxation protocol, I would only do it once a day, but probably if you could do it once a day, that would be fantastic. The next time, let's see if we can get to 6 seconds. So can we get to 6 seconds? Awesome. And then we feed again at 10 seconds. And you stay on that set until you can do it exactly as written with your dog remaining relaxed. And at that point, you move on to the next set. And it normally takes somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes to do the entire thing. There are audio files of it. So that's why I had my headphones on, because it was telling me what to do. It was pause for 5 seconds, and then it would tell me when it was time, or it would say back up or clap or whatever it was, so that I didn't have to have it printed out. But you want to go through it all. However, if your dog's getting up off the mat and they're not ready for it, well, you're not going to go through it all. We're going to go back and make it easier, or maybe do a different set. All right, I'm assuming that Terry's technical question was answered. Yes, I am sharing my screen. Hopefully that was fixed for you.
Here are 2 more questions that are somewhat related.
Okay.
Lindsay said that she can get mat behavior, but it seems like working, not relaxing. And then someone else said that asked if you recommend using a marker while using the protocol, because her dog tends to get more excited when she marks the behavior.
Yes, I do not recommend using a marker during the protocol. I do recommend just feeding. When you're first teaching the mat, you could use a marker to mark when the dog targets the mat. Or if they're learning to settle, I suppose you could mark when they've settled, but pretty much that's the only time I tend to use the marker in association with the mat, is when we're teaching that go-to mat aspect of it. And then once they've learned, the mat becomes what I call sticky very quickly. The dog wants to be on the mat. When the mat is present, boom, that's where the dog is going to be. At that point, I stop using any marker. Because yes, exactly. They associate that clicker or that marker with, woohoo, we're working and I'm excited. And we want to bring that energy level down. In terms of the working versus relaxing, that is not unusual. And you just reminded me that there's a protocol that I did not include, which we call down for the count, which is basically designed to help dogs that start offering behavior. So it's like, they're there and, they're stationing hard, and they're working, or maybe it's like, oh, well, this isn't working. Let me try sitting in this position. Oh, I didn't get fed for that. Well, let me try sitting up a little higher. So they start offering behaviors, or maybe those types of things. So down for the count is designed specifically for that. And it's basically where you would start with 1 and feed, and 1 and feed, and 1 and feed. And if your dog is remaining relaxed at 1, can we go 1, 2 and feed? And is your dog remaining relaxed there? And so you basically just start going up, increasing the amount of time as long as your dog is able to remain successful. I will also say that pairing take a breath with mat work is a great way to help bring that energy level down. So the dog gets on the mat and then you have your nice relaxation Zen moment. You can, well, unless this is exciting for your dog, sometimes getting down on their level is exciting. I was going to say you could even sit down and relax, next to them. So we're making it really casual. If getting down on their level is exciting, maybe you're just sitting on the couch while they're relaxing on the mat. So try and make it look and feel like a Zen session, yoga session, meditation. So it's just everybody's nice and relaxed and calm, and bring that type of feel to it. Also try slowing down your movements. One of another trainer, and I can't think of who it was, said they like to do like they're moving through molasses is what they like to tell their clients. So it's not these quick movements, but nice, slow, steady. So I guess modeling and then, down for the count would be probably the go-to for helping with the relaxation on the mat.
For the whiplash turn, is it okay if a person stands still tosses the treat away, and that gets the dog away from you, and then you call the dog's name and the dog turns back.
Is it okay? Yes. Is it the ideal setup? Probably not, but certainly if you need to make adjustments for somebody who maybe can't move that quickly, or, you know, does get dizzy very easily. It's kind of, we kind of joke about that, but I mean, the getting dizzy aspect, but you don't have to get dizzy. What I would say is, if it's an issue of the dog is faster than the person, a lot of times we end up just dropping a couple treats, so it takes them a little bit longer. If it is that it's difficult to go from side to side, yes, you could modify it that way. My hesitation is that tossing treats tends to be a little exciting. You know, it tends to bring the energy level up, and not that they have to be, you know, cool cucumber with the whiplash turn. We want it to be a fun game, but that's my concern, is I don't know what it would look like if we were doing the tossing treats and the dog turning back. What I would say is you could probably have two people and have the dog, you know, turning towards one, that person puts the treat down, and then the other person calls them and they turn towards that person. So that might be the modification that I would recommend for the avoiding dizziness personally, but it's not to say that you can't do the treat toss. I'm not sure what that would look like. So it would depend on the dog and how it came out.
Someone else wants to know if you call the dog out of the crate or release the dog out of the crate.
Yes. So when you're doing reorienting out of the crate, ideally your dog would know to remain in the crate until they're released. And saying their name would be one way to release them, or if you have a release cue, you would use that.
And for a dog who's anxious around small spaces and therefore they aren't using the crate, what is the next best place?
So anything that would have them turning towards you. So if you could be around the corner. So you're setting up food on one side, you're around right out of sight, you call them and they're coming around the corner to find you. So anything that has that aspect. You're going to see later that I'm going to show a video of how to do reorienting at the front and at a door. So you could also do that, but it doesn't have that same, it's a little different technique. But that also is a way to teach that automatic reorienting when going through a threshold.
There's also a question, I'm not real sure about sitting or down for the PFR. What's your opinion?
I think that means protocol for relaxation, maybe.
That's probably it. Yeah.
Yes. So as you saw in my video, I had one dog that was sitting and one dog that was lying down, and those are their defaults. So that's what I went with. The relaxation protocol as written, I believe, starts with saying something like dog sits for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever. And then, so like, I think the first time through it says sit, and maybe the second time through says down. There are a couple different versions of it. My answer is whichever one your dog automatically relaxes into. So when I do mat, I do not ever cue the dog into a position on the mat. The first thing that they're learning is the mat is the place they want to go, because that's where the treats happen. So that makes the mat sticky. And then they also get heavily reinforced for settling on the mat. And whatever settling looks like for your dog is what I'm going to go with.
There were some general questions. One is, can Control Unleashed help with prey drive?
I saw that one.
It can help with situations where a dog is people reactive. And the other, can it be effective with known stressors like approaching the car to get in or visitors to the home? In these situations, often the dog won't take treats.
Yes. Typically, when we have an issue with the dog not taking treats, it's a threshold issue. So the dog is not in a space where they can be learning because they're too stressed. They're more in fight or flight or freeze. mode, and we never want them to be like, there's no learning that's going to occur in that moment. So what I would say in an instance where somebody comes in and the dog stops eating, we have to start before the person came in. And that's where those setups come in. So it's that about that setting up the dog for success. So yes, the short answer is yes to all of those questions. Control Unleashed is great for all of those things. Which protocols we use and how we approach it is going to depend on which one of those you just highlighted. There is a specific protocol for approaches, which we are going to get to. But yes, so let me see as we're going through if I can highlight this one is great for this one. But yes, that's the answer. Yes, Control Unleashed is great for all of those things.
Okay, I have a feeling we better move
yes.
on and get back to questions later.
I know, I don't even know what time it is, but I know we got to get going. Okay.
It is 10 of 3.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. So look at that is one of the things that we use for prey drive and for dogs that are uncomfortable with things. So that aspect of whatever we're playing look at that with, we don't interact with is good for prey drive in the sense that we're not interacting with it. Again, the setup has to be that the dog is far enough away from whatever that is. And so there's a whole bunch of how we would do that, which I can't get into, but join a class and we can go over that. In terms of something they're uncomfortable about, again, they're pointing it out instead of reacting to it. And the pointing it out lets them know that thing is not going to interact with me, which helps with that comfort level. So I am probably going to narrate this video. So he is on his mat, which is his safe space. This is my daughter, so he's totally comfortable with her, but he is pointing her out. Right there was a very subtle, his eyes just barely moved. His eyes moved again. I have the note there that he was pointing her out and I missed it in the moment. So that was me doing a setup of playing look at that in that location with a helper that I knew he was comfortable with, because I wanted to utilize it with something that he's not as comfortable with. So in this next video, we're going to be playing this game, and there is a puppy in the yard across the way. And he's my fence barker. So this is something that we've been working through. So that's why I wanted to play look at that in the yard so that he starts to get the concept of he could tell me that there's another dog there instead of running along the fence and barking at them. So I am cueing, take a breath here. That's why you're seeing my hand come up, because I'm cueing it. I'm also heavily reinforcing him for being on the mat, because outside with things happening is very exciting for him. So being calm on the mat is something I want to really reward. Again, nice deep breath there. So I just noted that he went over threshold there, which is not ideal, but he was able to calm back down quickly. And now I ask him, can you take a nice deep breath? So one of the other ways that we use take a breath is assessing their mental state. Oh, whoops, sorry, this is not mine to share. I apologize. So this video was from a presentation that I did at the Control Unleashed conference. And I had another trainer who we presented together, and that was one of her videos. So sorry about that. I didn't know that was there on the end. recently, this is the most recent addition to the Control Unleashed program. It's called, we named it Latte because that's Leslie's sense of humor. So it's look at that plus enrichment. And so it's look at that, then enrichment, which is where we get Latte. So she designed this sort of as a response to those who were concerned that look at that set the dog up to constantly be, some people felt that look at that meant that your dog was constantly looking for things out in the environment. When used appropriately, what look at that actually results in is a dog that stares at their person. Where's the dog? The dog is over there. And they just really become sort of hyper-focused. However, it does require that the person is there to interact with, or the dog knows how to come tell the person about it. Latte was designed to help the dog learn to be okay and engage with their environment. So do natural dog behaviors, sniffing, something that's physiologically calming, chewing, just interacting with their environment rather than necessarily having to interact with the person. And setting up the idea that when these things happen, the dog is able to behave normally. So again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because we can't. But so the idea is that you choose a location with plenty of opportunities for movement and enrichment. If possible, you set up an enrichment decompression loop. So again, the idea is decompression of stations. So in the video, you'll see that that's what I have. The helper should be at a distance and intensity that allows the animal to remain sub-threshold. So again, we are doing a deliberate setup in which the dog should be able to be successful. If the dog can't be successful, then we need to change our setup. So there are two different versions. For the first one is for dogs that are familiar with look at that. So instead of them orienting to the person and saying, hey, there's something over there, we're transferring that to, oh, hey, yes, there is something over there. How about something in your snuffle mat? So in this scenario, the animal may look towards the helper and then back at the trainer, or they may just look towards the trainer. Either way, looking at the trainer cues the trainer to take them to the next station. The end goal is for the animal to be able to process the stimulus and then engage with the environment. For animals that are not familiar with look at that, we have the decaf version, which very simply, if the animal looks towards the helper, you stay at that station and sprinkle more treats. If the animal looks towards the handler, then we go to the next one and sprinkle more treats. I do not have a video of decaf. I apologize. I just have a very quick video of Latte because when I went to look at mine, they were all terrible. So there are much better Latte videos out there, but this will at least give you some idea. This was me experimenting with it very early on when she had just come up with it. There are dogs barking. Again, we know that this is a potential trigger for him. So we are playing this in my backyard while the dogs are barking. And I have a little loop set up. There are a couple boxes and a snuffle mat here for me to dump treats in. We're going to do this really quick. He's behind me right here. I was looking to make sure he didn't react to the dogs barking. Do you hear those doggies? I hear those doggies. Think about that. All right, so that was a really fast one. But you could see in the video, he was aware of them and he remained under threshold. Okay, there were a couple that I wanted that were very quick that I was going to answer. What's the difference between look at that and a conditioned emotional response? For those of you that don't know what a CER is. Well, typically what we refer to as a conditioned emotional response is not voluntary. It's an emotional reaction. So the dog shows something Like what I'm most familiar with is in food guarding protocol. So when you approach the bowl, instead of a behavior that says the dog is uncomfortable, the dog is wagging their tail in anticipation of you dropping something in their bowl. So it's not that they're choosing, although they could be choosing to like back up or offer a sit or that type of thing, but that would not be what I would classify as a CER. The CER is the emotional response that causes them to do that operant behavior. So not to get too into the technical, but that's what I would say. Look at that as basically the dog acknowledging that they're aware of something, and us having that conversation. Okay. When I play look at that with my dog, I swear he starts training me. He looks away simply to look back and get his trait. He is not worried by whatever he looks at. If he was previously worried and now he's not, I would say win-win and take it. If you introduced the game and he wasn't worried about stuff, then I would maybe start to acknowledge it, not necessarily treat everything, but literally have a conversation. I do see that dog. Thank you for telling me about that. Or I see that squirrel over there. Good job. Good eye. Sometimes you're treating, sometimes you're not. But really, especially if you have a dog that's been anxious or reactive and that's their choice, like, hey, I would like to get paid for telling you there's a squirrel over there. I'm going to take that and run with it. An enrichment station, basically a snuffle mat, a box that you can drop treats in. If there are leaves on, you can have natural, like tossing treats in the grass, tossing treats in leaves on the ground. So anything that the dog has to work a little bit, use their nose, do a little bit of foraging. Enrichment is basically something that allows the dog to perform natural behaviors. So it helps them mentally, and they're doing things that a dog is supposed to do: chewing, licking, sniffing, foraging, all of those things. So an enrichment station is something that allows them to do one of those things. Lick a mat. Okay, I'm gonna move on as I'm looking at these. Okay, pre-mat principle. I just wanted to touch on this very briefly because this is something that we utilize a lot within Control Unleashed. It states that you can use access to the performance of a high probability behavior to reinforce performance of a low probability behavior. For the parents out there, you can watch TV if you do your homework. Done correctly, they get excited about doing their homework because it predicts them being able to watch TV. In dog terms, asking me if you can go play with that dog is going to result in going to play with that dog. So, so the low probability behavior in that case is the checking in with me. The high probability behavior is going and playing with the other dog. Yes, I'm getting a lot of questions that I want to answer, but I have to keep going. Okay. So just a quick review of foundation behaviors, because we haven't even gotten into pattern games yet. Take a breath relaxation protocol. I'm not actually even going to read that. Yep, I'm not even reading these. The point with the default is that it becomes so ingrained, it can override instinctive behavior. I am going to repeat for look at that. The environmental stimulus becomes a cue for the animal to orient to the person. So if that's your goal, that's when you use look at that. Latte, the animal learns how to decompress by engaging with the environment. So if that's what your goal is, then you use latte. So engagement versus just being okay and doing natural behaviors. Pre-mat principle, using something the animal really wants to reinforce what you want. I don't know why that was in there twice. Okay, pattern games. Sorry, kicking over treats. So they are repetitive, predictable framework of cues and behaviors. I'm not going to read the first quote, but I do want to read Leslie McDevitt. Describes pattern games as a repetitive, predictable framework of cues and behaviors that help the learner process the environment by weaving the unexpected into the safety net of the expected. This is where it's really beneficial for anxious dogs, worried dogs, fearful dogs, reactive dogs, because that predictability. And there's another aspect that isn't in that quote, in that the dog a lot of times is in control of the pattern. The dog tells you to take the next step. So then we add in that control. If you are an anxious person and you're familiar with that, like I am, feeling like you're out of control is definitely going to increase your anxiety, your worry, or not knowing what's going to happen next. Think about how uncomfortable that is and how much better you feel when you know what's going to happen next and you feel like you have some control over your environment and the situation that you're in. So that's really what is so powerful about these games. So I touched on this a little bit, but you always teach the pattern in a low distraction setting first. So the idea is the animal should be relaxed and comfortable. There shouldn't be anything that they're worried about. And then once they're really comfortable with the pattern, hey, this is a fun game. I know how to do this. I like this. You can start to incorporate low-level stimulus into the pattern, a helper, but again, something that the dog is familiar or comfortable with, something that's neutral, not something that's going to get them too excited or something that they're worried about. Once the animal is able to process that and remain within the pattern, you can start to increase the intensity slowly. And so again, we're building and we're building and we're building and we're building and working up to those more real life situations, those chasing the deer, chasing the squirrel. The short answer to all of those questions is that we have to build that foundation outside of that setup. And then we have to slowly start to build them in. The trick with wildlife is you cannot predict where they're going to show up or what they're going to do. So we need to figure out ways to do those intermediate steps. Typically with squirrels, I tell people to buy a realistic looking stuffed squirrel because they can predict where it's going to be and what it's going to do. And that's your bridge between the no squirrel and the real squirrel so that you can do all of the practicing with the fake squirrel and then get to the point where you can start with the real squirrels. And distance. It's always distance and intensity. The intensity of the stimulus and the distance. That's the key for keeping your dog below threshold. Threshold being the point at which your dog reacts to something. Okay, and you have to set the animal up for success in order to have a foundation to build on. All right, let me see if there are any quick questions. Jenny. So with Premack Principle, the goal is not to decrease their drive to do whatever you're giving them access to. It's that they're more likely to do the other behavior. So checking in with you. So if you were using Premack Principle with chasing squirrels, you would be trying to encourage them to check in with you before chasing the squirrels. It wouldn't decrease the chasing of the squirrels. We would want to use a different thing for that. So it's not to decrease the high probability behavior, it's using access to it to reinforce what you want to happen. Okay. So in fact, just another quick answer, look at that for noises in the environment. I was using Latte for noise rather than sight. I jokingly refer to it as listen to that rather than look at that. You can use the same idea for noises as well. So I have often done that with sounds because both of my dogs can be reactive to sounds, dogs barking especially. Okay, patterns, we have to get into the patterns. Up, down is the simplest pattern game. So it tends to be one of the first that I introduce. It is literally just the dog moving their head up and down. That's why we call it up and down. We use it for acclimating to a new environment, or again, when adding stimulus to an environment. It's one of the easiest things to start with for a dog getting comfortable with something. So I, use up, down pattern, very easy pattern for the trainer, very easy pattern for the dog. And then maybe I start walking around. So the dog starts being able to process somebody walking around while playing this game. Then maybe I'm walking around a little bit differently, or maybe I'm walking around a little more erratically, or then maybe I'm tossing a ball in the air. And so again, I'm progressing as the dog is successful. I don't want to go too fast, and I want to have nice small increments so that we're able to add on. Let's do a quick look at this.
Yes. 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 Yes.
All right, so in that video, I just sort of layered on. So first playing it indoors with nothing going on. And then I might have one of my helpers, my kids, moving around while I'm doing it. And then the next step would be doing it outside when nothing's happening. So you saw me playing up, down when we were out on a trail. And then the last video is we're playing up, down when there was a dog lying down over in the pavilion. So building it in. And then I sort of played for a little bit and then was sort of waiting to see, was he going to look back, do a little bit of look at that, let me know how concerned he was. And he looked like he was ready to move on. And you could see as soon as we started to move, he was much more comfortable. I don't think he liked the wind, but so that was just a brief example of building on in a pattern. Okay. So ping pong, very similar to up, down, but it starts to add in a little bit of movement. So instead of just putting the treat down in front of the dog for the dog to look down and eat the treat and look back up, we start to add in movement by putting the treat to the side and then the other side. So that's why we call it ping pong. So I would put it on the right and the dog would eat it. The dog would orient back to me. I would then put it on the left. The dog would orient back to me. So that's where we get the ping pong aspect of it. The goal of this is not to have the dog running back and forth. That is not the goal. We also don't want it to be like a toss far away where the dog has to find it, because that interrupts the pattern. The goal of the pattern is for the dog to orient back to the person. And so by putting the treat away from me, I am setting them up to be able to turn back to me. So again, it's that focus that we get with up, down, but it's moving the dog a little bit further away from me. So they have to do more movement to turn back to me. We tend to use it for the same things. I tend to use ping pong for dogs that they find movement helpful. So think about people who pace. They need to pace, they need that movement. That's when I tend to use ping pong versus up, down, or if we're stuck in place. So you'll see later in the vet visit, I'm using up, down because I'm stuck at the front desk. So I'm using up, down there. And ping pong I might use, when I had a little more space. Okay, so here is me using ping pong to introduce the crate to Obi. I will say right off that this crate is too small for him. He's having to duck down to go in. So I did not do a great job of setting my learner up for success, but he does a great job of being a good sport and going in there despite that.
Freebie.
I threw it too far back. So you can see he's having to duck down to get in there. This is his first time entering that crate, by the way. Ping pong has become one of my favorite ways of introducing the crate to a dog that's never been in one, because it has that aspect of going in and coming out. So the dog doesn't get stuck in there. That is another core principle of Control Unleashed, is approaches are always paired with retreats. So going in doesn't mean they stay in, they come right back out. And again, I'm there making that choice to go in and out. Somebody asked, which was a great question, would ping pong be a good protocol to use for approaches? My only hesitation there is that the treat, like if the treat is being put close to the person, I always want to avoid that. Oh, I really want the treat, but I'm concerned about somebody. We don't want that conflict of that. So there is a protocol specifically for approaches that we will go over later. What I would say is if it's an object versus a person, then I might do ping pong. So like getting close to the vacuum. So like maybe you're doing it parallel to the vacuum and then you slowly start to turn where one of the times they're going a little bit closer to the vacuum. So an object, I would say you could do ping pong because they're moving towards it, moving away. But there are other protocols, other pattern games that we're going to get to that we tend to use more for approaches. So Super Bowls and requested approach training are what we tend to use for those. Yes, I do. For the pattern games, we do tend to mark. So in the up down game, I don't know if you heard, but when the dog looked up, I was clicking. And in here, you would click when the dog orients to. We do tend to mark for that orientation. Do you have to mark in the pattern game? No, you do not. But if you are going to mark, it always occurs when the dog is orienting. We use the word orient because it doesn't have to be eye contact. So it's the dog engaging with you, turning towards you. I don't care if the dog is looking at my treat pouch. I don't care if the dog is looking at my hand. The dog is choosing to interact with me. I don't need eye contact. Not to say that you couldn't start with that and then work towards eye contact, but it's not a requirement for the pattern. And so for me, it's not something that's important to me. So I never work up to that. Quickly before I move on, how to make sure your dog doesn't start jumping when playing these pattern games. For me, for the jumping, it's about where the hand is. I either don't have the treat in my hand until after I've clicked and then I'm getting it and immediately putting on the ground. Or if I have lots of treats in my hand tends to be up here. So when I'm standing up, this is high and then the treat is immediately boomed down to the dog. I tend to find that dogs jump when trying to get a treat when there's a lot of limbo in this area. So like as you're reaching down, if it's going slowly or if the hand is out here. So that's how I would avoid that. But typically I would say in patterns, I don't get a lot of jumping in patterns because they're so into the pattern that we don't tend to get a lot of jumping. And up down is a great one to prevent jumping because you're putting the treat in front of the dog's nose and you're leading them down to the ground. And then as soon as they look up, before they even have a chance to jump, you're marking and they're anticipating the next treat on the ground. Okay, I love using ping pong with the crate. Yes. You treat when the dog orients. So somebody asked specifically, you click when the dog orients to you. So for those of you, oh no, Deborah was answering that question. Yeah, so the click is marking the behavior that you want. So that is the marker that says, yes, that has earned you a treat. So in general, that's the purpose of a clicker or a marker. Okay. Yes, it's great for cars too. Ping pong with cars for dogs that hate the cars. That's a great one. All right, moving on. I could answer questions all day. Give me a break. This was actually the original pattern that Leslie came up with before she even had the concept of pattern games in general. That was the third book. But this was the first one she designed, and she developed it to help build drive in her dog who shut down very fast. So this is from the first book. Her dog Snap would just shut down immediately. Any pressure, if he thought you wanted him to do something, he would shut down. And so Give Me a Break sets up a situation in which the dog chooses to engage with you. The dog says, I want more. Let's do this again. Because you disengage with them and they have to come get you. What you're going to see in the video is not how we first do it or how we start to teach it. I believe what I have in the video here is using give me a break at the window. So once the dog knows the pattern of give me a break and knows to come and find you, there are a lot of different situations you can use it in. One of my favorites is, I think, in the next slide, which is setting up the reorienting at a door, which we talked about earlier. And in this one, I am using it to teach my dog that when he sees something out the window, he can come tell me about it. So this idea of look at that where you report rather than react, I'm using give me a break for him to figure out that even if I'm not in the room, he can come tell me that somebody walked by. So hopefully I am telling you the right one. Teaches the animal to disengage from something and orient to the handler. It turns a stimulus in the environment into a context cue to tell the dog to come find you. And we use context cues a lot in Control and Leash. And that's why I say we get a lot of default behaviors, because it's the dog offering the behavior based on those context cues. Things in the environment tell the dog, this is what I should do right now. Yes, this is at the window. So I do have a screen on the window there because I want to be sure that he's not practicing barking at things out the window when we're not playing this game. So again, those setups, he's only has access to look out the window when I have set everything up for us to be introducing this new concept. When I see something out the window, I'm going to find her and tell her. And hopefully as I'm doing it the first time, there really isn't anything going by, but then you see him a couple times look out the window before he comes and gets me. Okay, somebody asked, once your dog is well versed in this behavior, do you give him a differential reinforce? Oh, no, I'm trying to remember. it's something like reinforcing an incompatible behavior or something along those lines. Sometimes I get confused with the abbreviations too. What I will say is, for me, a dog that is reactive or anxious about something, I am fine with rewarding them for telling me about it for the rest of their life, personally. Do I have to? No, certainly not. Pretty much with any behavior, you have to continue to reinforce it to some extent or it extinguishes. But again, ideally, our end goal is that the dog no longer worries about it. So seeing something out the window isn't something that he needs to react to or worry about. Is it worth getting up off the couch to come and tell me about it? Hopefully at that point, it probably won't be worth getting up off the couch to tell me about it. But that's really our end goal. But I am okay with paying my dog for making those choices, especially a reactive dog. My personal thing is I always have my treat pouch. I may not need it. Well, when I'm out on a walk, I should say, I don't carry it around the house, but I do have treat stations all around the house so that I can reinforce behavior whenever I have that opportunity. I love Colette's question because it is a very important thing. A lot of dogs have trouble going from playing a pattern game to not playing a pattern game because I looked at you and you gave me a treat. Now I'm looking at you and you're not giving me a treat. What gives? What changed? So I do recommend transitioning out of patterns, especially for dogs that are new to this concept of it's working time, it's not working time. So I do like to offer an activity that says, this is what you should be doing now. An edible chew, a stuffed Kong, a lick-a-mat, whatever the dog likes and can focus on, helping them to transition out of this very high reinforcement, engaging stuff to being on their own or not engaging with you. You could also transition from playing a pattern to doing mat work. So that's a nice transition from being active to being calm, getting reinforced for being calm. Hopefully by the time you release them off the mat, they understand that we're done. So just helping them with those transitions is what you want to do. I'm not sure what you mean by do you name the behaviors? If you're talking about adding a cue, no, because the dog, we're never telling the dog what to do. We're never asking them to do anything. The pattern is them telling us to do the next rep. I mean, other than like putting the treat down, pretty much a lot of them are the context cue of the treat. The treat goes on the ground and then the dog comes and finds me or the dog looks towards me. So we don't have to name it because we're not telling the dog to do something. We have names for it, so we know what we're talking about. But I'm never telling my dog to do anything. The only cue that we've gone over so far, I think, is the look at that, because again, I'm telling them that there's something out there, but I don't think any, and Whiplash turn, but that's their name. But yeah, all the rest of them, it really isn't about cue and response. It's about learning a repertoire of possible responses to, bless you, different environments. Sorry, he scared me when he sneezed. Okay. I know there are a lot more questions. I'm going to try and get through this so that I can answer as many as possible of them at the end.
Angie, one that has come up a lot that I
yes,
think
thank you.
Is when you're rewarding the dog. Is it when she comes to you? Is it when she looks at the window? There's a lot of
forgive me a break.
Yeah.
When the dog comes to get me, that tells me to go back and put a treat down on the window. So the give me a break setup, and I should have done a short clip of how we first start teaching this, is you put a reset treat. So you put the treat wherever you want it. We typically start with them being in a box. So if you are ever in an in-person game and control an in-person game, I'm going to slow down. A control unleashed class, we will usually have a box set up. And you will go in there individually with your dog. Dog will be off leash. You will set a treat down on the ground, walk away and sit down on a chair. The dog can do anything. They can sniff, they can do whatever. But if the dog comes over to the chair, that cues you to get up off the chair and go put another reset treat down. If you were marking, you would mark when the dog came over to the chair to get you. So in the scenario where I am walking away and he comes to find me, I would mark when he finds me and lead him back to the window to put the treat down. Hopefully that answers the question. There are, in some patterns, there are delays between a mark and receiving the treat because we're setting it up in a certain place. So like with Whiplash turn, I click when the dog is looking and then they turn back to me and I'm putting it on the ground and then I'm going around to the other one. Anytime we're doing reset treats, there does tend to be a delay. You'll notice in Super Bowls, we will mark when the dog looks up and then we will lead them over with the treat to the next bowl. But the marking always comes with the orientation. So in this case, it's coming to find me. In ping pong, it's turning back to you, and up down, it's looking up towards you. So that is always going to be the cue to do the next rep in a pattern game, is the dog orienting to you. And that is always the markable moment in a pattern. Look at that, the markable moment is when they're looking at something. But for look at that, just forget that I said anything about it other than go watch Leslie's video because there's just too much to get into. So this is another version of Give Me a Break where I'm specifically using it to set up automatic orienting towards me at a doorway. I don't remember if it starts with music or not. I don't think it does. So this one will not have music. So you may need to turn up the volume to hear, but hopefully you can just see what's happening. So I'll go ahead and narrate a little bit. This is their back door. So for safety, they don't have to be holding the leash. Nice timing on your click. I don't think you can hear the clicker, but he is clicking when she looks back at him. And that cues him to put the next
right there,
down.
click. Yes, very nice. Good. Good. And so, yep, exactly right, Mike. So you're just going to keep working your way towards the right there. Yep, same spot. Good. Good. That same spot. Mm-hmm. Good. Good. A little bit further. Very nice. All right. And one more, and then we're going to try putting it on that step. Good. Beautiful. Yep. Lovely.
I'll take it.
Good. And let's end right there.
So before I go on to the next video, I'm just going to highlight. So it jumps. I unfortunately don't have the original of this video, and this is what I had shared. So this is what I have. But what we did was when the door was closed, we were putting treats in front of the door, and then she was turning back to her trainer, her dad. And he would click when she looked at him and put the next treat down by the door. When it jumps, the part that we're missing is we opened the door up like this and set the treat down in front of the door, and she turned back to him. And then over time, we opened it like this, and then we opened it like this until you get to the point where it's wide enough that the dog can go through at any time. But each time she's choosing to turn and orient back to him. And then once it was open wide enough, we started putting the treat further and further outside of the doorway so that she had the ability to go out and turn back in, which is what the end behavior looks like. And that's what you're going to see in the next video. This was not an ideal setup because it immediately went downstairs. So that's why it was a little awkward. But that's what we were trying to set up. And in this next video, you're going to see where the dog is actually going out the door. Yes, one of the nice things about having this automatic reorientation is that it can help prevent door dashing, because the first thing the dog does when they go outside is turn back towards you. So yes. All right, so let's watch this one. You will see that at a certain point, she won't be able to walk away because she's holding the door open just slightly, but the dog is still turning back to her. Has to leave the door and come get you, and then you come back and do the next one. So he sort of did it the first time, and then, so here, there we go, that's it. Perfect. Good. All right, and this next one, yep, that's perfect. That's just what I was going to tell you to do. Put it right down there. Make sure you can, yeah, he got it. And then yes, good. So yep, you're just going to put it right on the mat. I don't think he saw you put that one down. You can see that the leash is nice and loose there. She wasn't holding him back. He was choosing to stay there. Yeah, so we're going to want it a little bit closer next time. Yes, that was great.
So I'm sorry.
So you're going as if you were going to come outside normally. So you're going to let him out. When he comes out, what we're hoping for is he automatically turns back, and you're going to say yes and give him a treat. Yes, exactly. Good boy. All right, so let's do it one more time, and then we'll come on out. Rocco is a rock star. Yes. Beautiful. So that was the first time we'd ever done that, and that was like 10 minutes, maybe, from start to finish. Okay. So Rebecca asked why the treat was on the floor rather than being hand-fed, because the treat is designating where the dog goes. That's why we call it the reset treat. So the dog is eating away from the person and the person is disengaged. The dog has to choose to come back and get the person. So if they're feeding by hand, there isn't that disengagement. So, and the placement of the treat is determining how far out the door the dog is going. So when we're first opening it up, we have it right there because we don't want the dog to go out there. And then as the dog gets better at turning back, we start having them go further and further out the actual door so that they're, coming back in. They're turning around and coming back in. So that's why it's on the floor. Okay. So this is another Rocco video because he happens to be my client at the time when I was trying to prep for my Control Unleashed conference. So I have lots of videos from him doing demoing things. This video is talking about 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3 walking is another pattern game. I will say that this is the only pattern game that is not dog led in the sense that we are not waiting for the dog to orient to do the next rep. This pattern is the prediction of 3 equals treat. So whenever you say 3, the dog knows that that means there's a treat. This video is not going to show you how to first teach it or any of that, but it's going to show you one of the benefits of 1, 2, 3 walking, and that's getting past sticky spots. So this is right in their neighborhood, and there is a dog friend. And in the first part of the video, you're going to see that when they get to the dog friend's house, that he really wants to go there. Then we introduce 1, 2, 3, and we 1, 2, 3 walk by the house again and watch what happens. Oh shoot! Just hang on one second. I'm gonna make that's not what I wanted. Apologize. I just want to be sure that it plays full. Hopefully, there's nothing embarrassing on there. Play full screen. Okay. I guess I have to share my screen again. Screen sharing has stopped. Can you guys? Nope, you can't see it. So let me hit share screen again. All right, sorry for that technical difficulty. Can everybody see my screen again? I'm going to pull up the chat so I can see yeses or thumbs up or yes. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, so let's watch this now. And you can't hear her counting, but she is counting out loud 1, 2, 3. And after 3, she offers the treat. So you could see him look, hey, that's where my friend lives. But he chose to remain in the pattern. And so that's the piece is the dog is choosing whether or not to remain in the pattern. We're never telling them what to do, but they make choices. Leslie likes to say that dogs like to remain in patterns. So if the dog is leaving the pattern, that is good data for us. That means that either we need to change our setup, or if we're in a real life scenario, the stimulus is there's something that's too exciting. There's something that's too worrisome. We always want to set it up so that they are able to remain in the pattern because that's what they want. And if they're not, then we need to change something up. And again, that's part of the conversational piece. The dog is saying, I can't. And you're saying, okay, well, then let's see how we can get to a point where you can say, I can't. What if the dog will not take treats on walks? Again, that is a threshold issue. If the dog will not take treats on walks, there are a couple different reasons for that. Either it's a dog where the world is too exciting. It's, they're at a rock concert and you're offering, something really boring, like reading a book, or a dog that is so anxious that they're immediately over threshold. So again, if we always have to find that intermediate step. If your dog can take treats and work great in the house, but on a walk they can't, how can we find that intermediate step? Will they work on a porch? Will they work in a fenced in backyard? Finding those transitions that get us where they need to be. And depending on whether the answer is the environment is just too exciting or the environment is too scary, I would approach those a little bit differently. For the environment is too exciting, I would start using a lot of Premack principle. Access to the environment is through me. And then once I start getting more of some re-engagement and the dog starts getting more comfortable, so, there's a combination of, are the treats worth it? Kibble is not very exciting out. So there's that too. I might use higher value and see if the dog is more interested. But there are a lot of things that go into that. But bottom line is, if a dog will not eat, then we need to back up and go into a scenario where they will. Okay. This is the voluntary version of 1, 2, 3. And it's, as I said, regular 1, 2, 3 does not involve the dog telling you to take the next step. This is where it becomes the dog telling you to do it. So voluntary 1, 2, 3 is where we move forward, counting our 1, 2, 3. We put a treat on the ground because, again, that has the dog disengaging from you, or at least in this case, looking away. And if the dog looks back towards you, orients to you, that tells you to continue the pattern. So you will see here that I wait for Piper to tell me to keep going. And then we'll talk about when you use this one after. All right, I'm cutting this video off because we are running out of time for questions. So when to use voluntary 1, 2, 3, when you have a question. Do you want to move towards this? Do you want to walk past this? Giving the dog that agency. So this is something you could use for an approach. Somebody asked about that. Voluntary 1, 2, 3. Do you want to move closer to that person? Do you want to move closer to that vacuum? 2-step. This is a great pattern for loose leash walking. This video is actually from one of my classes. This is another trainer who took puppy foundations with me. And this is her dog Dash, who is learning the 2-step pattern. So unlike 1, 2, 3, where the dog is moving with you, in 2-step, you're moving ahead. Put the treat on the ground while the dog is eating. You take 2 big steps forward. As soon as the dog looks up towards you, you can mark. I say can because a lot of times the dog is so fast. By the time you're marking, they're already moving towards you. But again, it's that orienting to you that causes you to mark and put the next treat down. And then as they're eating, you take the next 2 steps forward. So you can see here, Dash gets a little bit fast and Jennifer makes a really nice adjustment. Again, it's not doing full screen.
Adjustment.
That's really funny because I didn't know I said that in the video. Well, there you go. I think so both times. So it's great for teaching the dog to move with the handler, great for loose leash walking. Chair game is another moving pattern. This one is basically involves movement of the dog moving to and away from the chair. Why Leslie came up with this game is because chairs are everywhere. There are benches at parks. There are chairs at the vet office. There are chairs wherever you go. And so it's something that's easily recognizable by the dog that can be easily generalized. This is me playing chair game with my dog Piper in the reception area of the vet office. Okay, a couple questions I wanted to answer really quickly. Somebody asked, how do you phase out the reinforcement without losing the desired behavior? If you're talking about a pattern game, you don't. Within the context of a pattern game, you are always going to be feeding at that point of orientation. However, you should get to a point where you don't have to play the pattern game. So if we're thinking about being at a vet office, for example, Piper is going to need to continue to do her patterns for a long time before she gets comfortable being in that close proximity to other animals. But I may not have to, but over time, I'm going to need those patterns a little bit less. And so as she needs the patterns less, then she will be getting less treats. But within the context of the pattern, you do not fade the reinforcement. Okay, I wanted to touch on that. There may be a couple others, but we'll see if we can get through and do it. All right, Super Bowls. This is another one that's great for approaches. Again, the nice thing about Super Bowls is it pairs the approach with retreat. So this is, let me see if I can get a pointer. I don't want to get too technical or take too much time for that, but since I don't see it, I'm not going to bother. Okay. So these green circles are basically examples of how you could set up the bowls. They don't have to be bowls, but again, sense of humor, we call it Super Bowls. You can set it in a straight line, parallel, so that person there in the middle is the helper. So you could be doing it parallel to them. Don't think about how close, or yeah, that looks a little close to me for what you would probably start doing, but basically you're just getting the idea. You could do a curved around, so they're not really ever getting closer. So the closer they are, it sort of goes out and around. You can do the curved line, or you can do a direct approach. And you can, go between these. So you might start with the parallel, and then as they get more comfortable, you might do a little bit of a curve, and then you might go to the direct approach. It's great for working around potentially scary stimulus or working in proximity to other exciting things. So you're going to see this first one is a video from one of my classes. And so the dogs are doing Super Bowls within proximity of each other. Lovely. So you can see there that he did a great job of waiting for the dog to tell him to go to the next bowl. The dog was like, hey, there's another dog over there. But he was able to then check back in with his person. And Cinder, this dog right here that we're looking at, was a dog that was reactive to cards. And we used pattern games and look at that. And now she does great with cars passing by. So she wasn't one that was afraid of getting in the car. She didn't like that sort of fast moving thing. She did not like. All right. And here is, this is another one that is on my YouTube page. So this is using Super Bowls for loose leash walking. And we're using sidewalk cracks. So, you don't have to constantly be running ahead with the bowls, but we're using sidewalk cracks as the bowls to get nice loose leash walking. I would stay there until he's immediately looking back up. Okay. And so what we want to mark is that head motion coming up. So we're trying to isolate that before he even has a chance to offer that sit. Okay. So here he's just making sure he got everything. Right there. Good. That was lovely.
So every time he looks up, go to the next one.
Yep. Right there. And then take him to the next one. Excellent. And we're just going to keep moving down the sidewalk. Very nice. So again, I'm going to cut it off before we see the second dog doing the same thing because I want to be able to answer questions. Somebody did say that they were hearing the click when the dog gets a treat, not when they looks back. My guess is it's a video timing issue, but the person was clicking when the dog was orienting towards them. Okay. So here's our last pattern. Oh, we're not going to get to cooperative care. I'm so sad. Off switch. So off switch is a pattern in which the dog gets excited and then calms back down, and then gets excited and then calms back down. When I went through, did not have any video of this. I was very sad to say. So one of the instructors in training very kindly shared her video with me. I was trying to get a second one, but it didn't download in time. But this is her teaching off switch game to her dog. So she's doing a little bit of tug play to get the dog excited. And then she's waiting for her dog to offer the default behavior. And I think she even cues a little bit of take a breath to help with that relaxation.
You're so clever.
Trying to get him excited, doing a little bit of tug, a little bit of play. And then when he disengaged, now she's waiting for a nice default.
You do. All right. Can you down? Yes, good girl.
Now she is offering treats and waiting for a little longer relaxation period. You can also do off switch where the relaxation causes you to immediately recue the game. So settling down is immediately followed by another round of tug. It's all going to depend on your dog and what works best for them. All right. I had, why are we not going? There we go. Oh, this is, yeah, I do want to do this. I did have a whole nother section that we're going to have to skip, but maybe we can do a webinar on that later, but let's go ahead and put it all together. So this is my dog Piper at the vet, and you're going to see everything that I do while we're waiting. And you're going to see that the patterns flow one into the other and that I switch back and forth. So Control Unleashed is very flexible. It's meant to be flexible. It's meant to adjust to the learner and the environment, and you can flow from one to the other. I love that video. it makes my heart sing. We've worked really hard. This one I believe is also available on my YouTube. So I'm just going to just say that cooperative care and counter conditioning does have the requested approach training protocol that I was talking about. That's really nice. And maybe I can convince Deborah to have me join and do another webinar on that, but I'm going to fly through all of these and go to the last page because that has I'm going to leave these up. So if you guys, this will again be on the recording, but then you have those. And let's see how many questions we can get through in 7 minutes. I'm so sorry. Oh, somebody did ask a question about chair game for small dogs. Anything that you could use as a station. So stools I've used, anything that's low enough for the dog. You do an upside down bucket, or, just something that the dog, that is visually a visual target for the dog that you're going back to, leading back versus the chair. Again, the reason that she did a chair is because they're everywhere, but that doesn't work for every dog. Oh, you're so welcome, Joyce. I know it's a drop in the bucket. I feel so bad. There's so much I want to share.
One person wanted to know whether, for example, Rocco would need a game to get past his friend's house forever, or when do you stop?
So, again, if we're doing it correctly, we do get to a point where the dog is more comfortable in making those choices. In this case, it's just, I really want to play with that dog. But, this is a puppy that I had just started working with. And that was I think that was the first day that we worked on leash walking. So yes, ideally she continues to work with him until it gets to the point that when she, but again, it's a conversation. So if he says, "Oh, I'd really like to go see my friend," and she says, "Not today," that he goes, "Okay." And then we move along. And then maybe sometimes he says, "I'd like to go see my friend." And she says, "Sure, let's go see your friend." It's that conversation. Where are you at today? But again, our end goal is to have that communication. It's not, "I'm going to pull you over here," or "I'm going to stop walking and refuse to walk." It's, "I'd really like to go say hi." And you sort of have a conversation about that.
And there are a few people who mentioned getting the behavior they want, but then if they stop with the treats or try to transition out, their dog starts barking.
I'm actually going to answer 2 different questions. So I did see a question where somebody said that, for example, they taught their dog look at that, and the dog used to bark. Now the dog doesn't bark at the dog. They look at the dog, but if they don't get a treat, they bark at the person. So that, that's more of a conversation about the dog is expecting something and they're not getting it. So that's a little bit different. And we would need to tackle that differently. What I would say is, if you stop offering a reward and the behavior decreases, so it starts to go extinct, then we're not reinforcing it enough. And again, within a pattern, you're always going to be most likely using food. Now with off switch, you may be using other things as reinforcement. And I suppose there might be a way to tweak in different reinforcement. So like with default behavior, you're not always going to be feeding. It might be that they offer default to ask to go outside. They offer default to ask to play. Again, ideally we'd like a dog that comes over and sits in front of you to request interaction rather than a dog that jumps up or barks at you. But if we're losing the behavior, then it's not being reinforced. So you need to find a way that that you keep it as reinforcing enough that the dog still wants to do it. So there's got to be a balance there. But again, if we're talking about making a dog more comfortable, making them less anxious, making them less worried, our goal is to get to a point where they don't need that help. And if we're not getting to that point, then we need to look at our setups and make sure that we're actually setting things up so that we can start to see improvement.
There are a few people who had questions about 1, 2, 3. One of them wanted to know whether you stop at 3 to feed them or whether you do it as you keep moving, and whether you feed from your hand or drop on the ground.
So with the regular 1, 2, 3, you feed from the hand. With voluntary, we typically feed from the ground. We can adjust that to feeding. Like if we can't put it on the ground, you can feed it lower. So then the dog has a chance to look up, or, we can adjust to certain things, but typically from the hand for regular 1, 2, 3, on the ground for voluntary. In terms of stopping, it really comes down to whether you're able to keep walking and feed at the same time. If you and your dog can keep walking while you feed, you can keep walking. If it's too much for you or your dog and you need to stop to eat, then that's fine. So there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever works for you and your dog.
And someone brought up what to do about dogs that are barking in a car out the window.
Yes, I saw that one. Thank you for reminding me. So Give Me a Break is not the game that I would use for that. That would be one where I would honestly probably start, what I would probably use is Look at That. But again, we would want to start playing that game outside of the context of the car and get them really familiar with it and comfortable with it. And then you might be playing it in a parked car in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing going on. And maybe you have a helper moving around that the dog is playing Look at That. So like two of you go together, one person gets out of the car and walks around and the dog practices with that. And then maybe you go to a parking lot at a time of day where there isn't a whole lot going on. So there's occasionally an opportunity to play. And so that's how you build in those layers. So you always have to find a way to start in a scenario that the dog isn't barking, and then start to build in until you can get to the point where the dog can be in the car with cars passing by or people walking by or dogs walking by and they don't bark at it. So whatever it looks like in terms of what the dog barks, you have to work up to that.
Somebody else asked, they were asking specifically about a dog reactive dog, but I think this probably applies to everyone.
Okay.
How do you know whether to use Latte or a particular pattern game, or which pattern game? Where do you start?
So there is no right answer. There are, well, no, I take that back. There are a lot of right answers. There is no one right answer. So if you are someone who is new and you're maybe not comfortable with Look at That, or you and your dog haven't gotten very far with Look at That, then I might do a simple pattern like up, down. Again, you're at a distance where the dog is able to see, let's say in this case, a reactive dog, another dog, or a dog that's worried about people, to see it but not react to it. So the dog is playing up, down, and you've been playing the up, down, and they're in the pattern. They should always be in the pattern first, and then something becomes part of a pattern. So they're playing up, down, and somebody walks by and they notice that person, and then they look back at you and they continue the pattern. And somebody else walks by and they notice it and they look back at you and then continue the pattern. A dog walks by, they notice it, they look back at you and they continue the pattern. So they're able to process within that pattern. And for it to work the way that it's designed to work, they have to be in the pattern before that comes. So if your dog is a dog reactive dog and they're seeing another dog and they're barking and lunging at that dog, don't even attempt to try and put them in a pattern at that point. Because they're first of all, they're already gone. And your goal at that point is to get some distance and get them out of dodge. But they should be in the pattern first so that stimulus just becomes part of the pattern. Oh, sometimes when I'm playing up, down, a dog walks by. Okay, yeah, that's okay. And then what you'll find is a dog can walk by a little bit closer and they're okay with it. Or a dog could maybe be moving a little bit faster and they're okay with it. So you always have to keep all of those things in mind. And you may find that you think you're set up and the dog goes a little bit over threshold. So then we get a little more distance. Or, again, you always ideally want to start with a helper, whether it's a helper person or a helper dog, because you know exactly what they're going to do. versus a scenario where you just go out and hope that there's a dog walking by nicely on leash at the appropriate distance that your dog isn't going to react to. And so that's why it's always beneficial to have those setups, because you know exactly, you can set it up. And as the dog is more comfortable, then you can maybe start to add some stuff in. Maybe the dog wasn't moving. Now the dog is moving parallel, but not any closer. Now maybe the dog moves about a couple feet closer. So all of those things.
And I am going to ask you just one more question because it's a little after 4. Someone wanted to know about the difference in the relaxation protocol for puppies and for adult dogs. And he has a dog that is an older puppy out of the socialization period and is wondering which book would be most appropriate of the 3.
So I would still get puppy foundations to start with. So, you know, it's they don't have to be in the socialization window for the puppy one. It's basically just, again, sort of like starting them off on the right foot so that we hopefully don't have to work on fixing these problems down the road. But what I typically tell people is either get the first and the third or the second and the third. So if you have a puppy, get the second and the third. If you have an adult dog, get the first and the third, because those first 2 are going to really introduce you to the concepts. And then the third one is those patterns and really, so the first 2 are going to help you to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then the third one is adding in those really nice protocols, the pattern games, and also the 2 that we didn't get to go over today, which is the voluntary sharing and requested approach training.
Okay, I think given the time, I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions, but we got to most of them. Angie, thank you so much. And we will have you come back for the part that you didn't get to. I guess it's self-care.
It's so it's cooperative care and counter conditioning. So it's those 2 protocols, and then I threw in a little cooperative care too. Okay.
And to everyone else, I put it in chat, but if you didn't notice, we do have some classes coming up online that Angie will be teaching, and I would probably register for those sooner rather than later while there's still space. If not, there is a notification list you can join so that you'll find out next time the classes are scheduled. We will see you next time, Angie.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
2 days. Bye, everybody.